What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for April 2nd, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the podcast. Happy Hump Day to everyone out there. As we always do, let's start off with a little housekeeping. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at PhillyJimbo. If you are a podcast listener and you're not following me on social media or you only watch on YouTube, and even if you're a YouTube listener, go to my social media. That tends to be where a lot of the good discussions we have on the question of the day. We had some topics or some discussion on the Villanova 2005 2005 when they lost to UNC on the travel. We had a good debate on there. That's where a lot of the good discussion takes place. So whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever, hit me up on the social media, because there is where we have the discussion, and as well as I do put clips and highlights and newspaper clippings and just different things from whatever event we're talking about. Don't really want to mess with that on YouTube because they tend to be very heavy-handed with copyright stuff. So be sure to hit me up on social media. Join the discussion. Get some lively debates. The Tush Push one, lots of people had lots of opinions and very strong ones on the Tush Push. So all of that is occurring on my social media, whether it's Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever. So be sure to hit me up there. But obviously subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Trying to figure out a way to still, and again, with my day job, it does get tough sometimes to do some things, but I have a list of things to work on once spring break comes and the school year ends. So stay tuned for that. And while we're at it, I do this every now and then just because I tend to get a lot of questions about it. And over the past few weeks, lots of questions have been coming in, whether in person, through social media, DMs, whatever, about my process. And I guess I'll give you a peek behind the curtain, as I always like to say. And no, I do not know all of this stuff off the top of my head. Obviously, I remember the games. I remember what happened, but my brain definitely is not a walking encyclopedia. But a lot of prep work and a lot of time and effort is spent on prepping for this podcast. Usually about once or twice a month, I'll take a few hours, plan out the next month, and do the research, see what fits for sort of the vibe of Philly sports for that time frame, and then kind of map it out. So April, every single day in April is already mapped out. And then usually I'm 3 months ahead when it comes to the special thing we do. And obviously every now and then things come up, but I'm already planning the tournament for this summer. So stay tuned for that. So my brain is always working. So if I hear something, I think I mentioned this before. I don't know if they're doing it this year because I haven't listened to too many games so far, but on the Phillies, they used to do the Chick-fil-A nugget of the game or something along those lines. And it was this, whatever happened in Phillies history on that day. Get a ton of ideas from that. Like, my antenna are always up looking for things. I have a spreadsheet with about 50 tabs on it that I'm constantly adding and doing things for. I have about 50 Fridays with AI ideas. So my brain is always working. And then the other question I always get is, every day I do write out notes. And I'm very old school. I probably should start saving these. I throw them away at the end of the day. I think I mentioned this, and maybe I didn't. Been jotting these down since February, and in the process, I guess, and I don't even know if it's going to come. I don't mention it. I probably won't mention too much about it, but I'm thinking there might be a coffee table book in this podcast somewhere. So I'm kind of outlining and doing some things with that. But very old school with legal pads, Amazon. I go through about every 2 months, 3 months. I go through these. It is not 100% scripted. I get that question a lot. I jot down my notes, and I highlight certain things, and it's very, sometimes on here, I can't read my own writing. So just kind of look at my notes. You might hear the pages sometimes flipping as I go. Very old school when it comes to that. Probably, like I said, should save these and digitize them somehow to give me better notes and probably save me time in the future. But each night I spend maybe an hour kind of formatting and setting up sort of the call sheet, I guess, is what it would be on the rundown of what we're going to talk about. So every now and then, like I said, I like to pull back the curtain and let you know sort of what my process is and assure you that there is a ton of work. And then throughout the day, like my phone's constantly going off. Like I get all kinds of messages. I'm constantly checking Twitter, checking different websites, and just seeing what goes on. I listen to 94 whenever I can to kind of get a vibe, and sort of that's how I craft each show every day. So there's a little peek behind the curtain, but I did get a lot, especially at March Madness. Do you script it out? And no, this is not scripted out. When I first started, I used to script it out and basically read off the screen, and then I felt like it wasn't authentic. So now it's just literally bullet points, and that's why sometimes you hear me say a lot, and some of you probably will now not be able to unhear me saying but as I said, it is not scripted, and it just, like I said, a little peek behind the curtain. Be sure to check out my boys there was one, by the way. Be sure to check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences podcast. Lots of great things happening with their sports fan network. Go to clashingconferences.com to see details about how you can get involved and what they have going on. And then, of course, you can hear their podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Great group of guys in the network. So go to clashingconferences.com and see how you can get involved. And then check out Ryan and the crew over at Philly Goat. We'll get more into the Tush Push, but still time to get your Tush Push old school Tecmo Bowl shirt from Philly Goat before they do ban it. If you played Tecmo Bowl and grew up with it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's an awesome looking shirt. Probably would be an unstoppable play in Tecmo Bowl, especially with Bo Jackson. So go to Philly Goat, check out their double bogey down golf shirts, the fans, all kinds of Phillies gear. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com, promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. All right, so the Tush Push, they tabled it until at least May. And everything I heard from the commissioner, from reporter Adam Schefter reporting, I was listening to Elliott Shores Park, gave a live update yesterday on 94.1. It does appear that this will eventually get banned, at least in the iteration that we know of it. I think they tabled it because they did not necessarily have enough votes, which I think is weak. But I'm anxious to see how it plays out. I think what they're going to end up doing, which we talked yesterday, Bill from Flowertown was very adamant about that on my Facebook page, that the rule should have never been changed in the first place. You should not be able to push an offensive player. I mentioned the Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, USC in the national championship game. So it does appear as though it will be voted against, but people are very outspoken. You have people saying it's not a football play. You have some coaches saying, well, learn how to play or stop it, and you won't have this problem. I'm anxious to see what it comes up with, but like I said, to me, it comes off very petty. And look, I can be petty sometimes, but this is just, hey, we can't stop it. It's a competitive advantage, competitive edge for these teams to try to ban it, and it does appear as though they're going to do it. And I think Goodell, I think it was him who came out and said the player safety issue is, which I've never heard this before, and I wish I remembered who made this comment on Twitter, but he said we're looking at the potential of injuries in the future. And I mean, truthfully, if that's the case, the whole entire NFL should be banned for the potential risk of injury and serious injury to players. It should be flag football. So it does appear, like I said, it's going to eventually get banned, but the reason and rationale behind it is just absolutely a joke. But go to Philly Goat and get the Tush Push shirt before the Tush Push gets banned. Some positive Eagles news, though. They did change a couple rules yesterday. It does appear that the overtime rule that the Eagles proposed, a version of that, it did get passed. Basically, each team will have a chance to score. So the way it's set up now is if the team comes down, scores a touchdown, game over, the other team will get a chance to top that. But I think they're going to make it a 10-minute overtime period during the regular season as opposed to 15, which I'm good with. I mean, give the team a chance to come down. Fine with that. But the other good news, the teams can wear alternate or throwback jerseys now 4 times a season, which I think what that will do is obviously more opportunities for Kelly Green. But I think what this probably will do is allow them to wear them on the road. So you might see the Tampa Bay Creamsicle versus the Kelly Green Eagles down in Tampa. I don't know, again, if that's something the Eagles would even do. But as much as I love the Kelly Green jerseys, I really like the black. So if they could keep one game per year with the black jersey and then throw in a third Kelly Green game, I'm all for it. So I guess we'll get that. Once the schedule comes out, we'll see what that. So I guess that's somewhat of a positive news out of the owners' meeting. Sixers, 52nd starting lineup, 52nd different starting lineup this year, setting an NBA record for most starting lineups, which I find bizarre to me that the entire time they were doing the process, they didn't even come close to this record. So 52 different starting lineups. They lost 105-91 to the Knicks. Knicks fans were all over Twitter talking trash, and it's like, really? Like, you're going to get excited about sweeping this Sixers team? Congratulations, guys. You certainly earned that. But it was the 9th straight time the Sixers lost. Now, I've been talking a lot about that lottery positioning and where they need to be. Currently, they're in the 5th spot, 2 games above the Nets for the 6th. And we know the pick is 6th round protected. But how important is it for the Sixers to move up as much as possible? They're only a game and a half behind the Pelicans for the 4th spot. And I saw this on the Inquirer this morning, which I check the Inquirer every day before I get on, again, peeking behind the curtain. But if they're in the 6th spot, there's a 46% chance that they'll keep the pick. When they move up to the 5th spot, that becomes a 64% chance that they'll stay within where they need to keep that pick protected. But moving up to the 4th spot gives them an 81% chance. So the higher they go, the higher the percentages go. So while 5th is nice, it's still slightly above 50-50. Would love to get into that 4th spot, and they're only a game and a half behind with 6 games left. So a little something anyway to root for the Sixers for. Phillies back in action tonight against the Rockies. Zack Wheeler's on the mound. They're back to a normal sort of routine now. This is their first night game of the season. And looking ahead, big weekend, big week coming up. They have 3 games starting Friday against the Dodgers, and then they're down in Atlanta. So that leads to today's question of the day. Recapping yesterday's question of the day. I said, should we be concerned with the Phillies' struggles against starting pitching so far this year? 57% of you said yes, we should, and I agree. Again, they haven't been in a normal routine yet. I want to see how tonight goes, and I mean, you had the shadows and all of the other things that people were saying, but I want to see them the rest of the series against the Rockies do something against starting pitching, especially with the Dodgers and the Braves. It's only 4 games in. I get it. I'm not overly concerned, but it is on my radar. So thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. There'll be another one later in the show. But Phillies, Rockies tonight, Zack Wheeler on the mound. Let's just get a lot of runs and blow them out early and have a good Phillies night. All right, today we're going to go back to 1992. And on this day in 1992, we talk a lot on this podcast about bad Phillies trades, bad free agent signings, and just things that we did a whole thing a couple weeks ago on Lance Parrish. We don't talk too much about the good ones. And on this day in 1992, one of the best ones in Phillies history occurred. General manager Lee Thomas traded Jason Grimsley to the Astros for one Curt Schilling. Curt Schilling, if you remember way back when, if you're my age, he started off in the bullpen that 92 season, but emerged as a starter, pitched 10 complete games that year. Overall, Curt spent 9 years in Philly, won 101 games, 61 complete games. It's just unheard of. We're lucky if you get 61 complete games over the course of 3 years today. But he had 14 shutouts, over 1,500 strikeouts with the Phillies, and really was the ace of that staff for years. Terry Mulholland started the first game of the 93 season, but over that course of that 93 season, Curt Schilling certainly, especially into the playoffs and World Series, became the ace. He was the MVP of the NLCS, pitched that beautiful gem in Game 5 of the World Series when they needed a win. Made 3 All-Star games with the Phils, led the league in strikeouts 2 times. He's on the Phillies Wall of Fame, had a lot of success when it comes to continuing his career and winning World Series after he left, both in Arizona and Boston. Probably is one of those guys who should be in the Hall of Fame, but the off-the-field stuff keeps him out. A lot of his political takes and political views tend to get him in trouble. He says things all the time that a lot of people don't like, and I think that is one of the key things that is keeping him out. Maybe he gets in on the Veterans Committee, but Curt Schilling on this day was traded by the Astros to the Phillies for Jason Grimsley, who I don't think ever pitched for the Astros, maybe never even pitched again in the major league. One of those under-the-radar trades that paid off in dividends for the Phillies. That does lead to today's question of the day. Whether or not you like his political views and his hot takes, does Curt Schilling deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? And I think if you're looking at just what he did with the Phillies, probably not. But, I mean, he continued that run of success once he went to Arizona and into Boston. Again, political views aside, I do think he should be in the Hall of Fame. But what do you think? 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that, anything else Philly sports related off of your chest. Of all the ex-Phillies that names get thrown around, Bobby Abreu, Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, I think Curt Schilling is probably the most deserving ex-Philly to be in the Hall of Fame. But what do you think? Let me know. Hit me up on the social medias because that's where a lot of these good discussions, I'm anxious to see where this one goes. But should Curt Schilling be in the Hall of Fame? All right, and finally today, we're going to continue our discussion with Lenny Wagner. He is the author of Playing with the Best, One Man's Journey Through the Golden Age of Sports. That is available on Amazon through Lenny's website. If you're an audiobook listener like I am, it's also available on Audible. Lenny will be at the Mount Laurel Historical Society next week on April 8th at 7 p.m. to do a little presentation and sign copies of his book. All the information you need for that is in the description. And yesterday we talked a lot about Walter French's early career with the A's, how he got hooked up with Connie Mack and even on his radar. He was dismissed from the Army at West Point for grades. Randomly talked to one of Connie Mack's scouts on a train ride from the Army-Navy game, and the rest, as they say, is history. So today, Lenny went in and we talked a little bit about what Walter was feeling going into really coming into his own as a Major League Baseball player, expecting to have that starting job, and then losing his starting job today. We're going to find out to a Major League Baseball legend, but still ended up being successful. So here is Lenny to talk about Walter losing his starting job to a Major League legend.
But then the 1926 season, he plays the full season. He's one of the starting right fielders. He bats over 300. Only Al Simmons has a better batting average than he does in 1926. And everything looks to be in order for him to, play a lot again in 1927. And again, here's where, other forces at work come into play. There's a gambling scandal in baseball That includes Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker, who were considered at that time to be the greatest players. Prior to Babe Ruth, they were considered the two best players. So it was pretty shocking when they both on the same day resigned, said they were going to retire. Everybody's like, why? They're still playing really well. And anyway, there was a gambling scandal embroiled in, and we go through it in the book in some detail. And they're eventually cleared by Judge Landis, who's still the commissioner of baseball then. They're cleared, but the Tigers, in the case of Cobb, and the Indians, in the case of Speaker, released them. So now a lot of teams obviously have an interest in them. Even though their best days were behind them, they still were good draws, you know. So Connie Mack went hard after both of them. He did sign Ty Cobb, and Cobb joined the Athletics in 1927. So that cut into Walter's playing time a little bit. But then there were a series of injuries on the part of Cobb and the part of his other outfielders. So Walter ended up playing about 3/4 of the games and had another big season, hit over 300. And coming into the 1928 season, I think he felt that, things were going to really be good for him because no one expected Ty Cobb to come back for one more year.
Thank you, Lenny. I mean, gambling scandals, like, not so much. It's not things are not so much different than what they are today, especially with two of the game's biggest names. Like, that would be the equivalent of like Bryce Harper and Manny Machado having a gambling scandal. It's just crazy. But thank you, Lenny. Looking forward to talking with you again tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about his retirement, his comeback, all based on a dream he had, as well as becoming a World Series champion. So stay tuned for that tomorrow. Again, you can catch Lenny's book, Playing with the Best, One Man's Journey Through the Golden Age of Sports, wherever you get your books. It's on Amazon, through his website, Audible if you're an audiobook listener, and you can catch him at the Mount Laurel Historical Society April 8th at 7 p.m. doing a little presentation and then signing copies of his book. On this day in 1992, Phillies traded Jason Grimsley to the Astros for Curt Schilling in a move that ultimately would pay off in dividends for the Phils. Curt, though, did have a ton of success after he was traded away. And that is the question of the day. Is Curt Schilling a Hall of Famer? Let me know your thoughts on that. Very anxious to see the discussion today for that. We'll have more on the Phillies Rockies tomorrow, as we'll continue to monitor the NBA standings to see where the Sixers end up. As I mentioned, the higher they go, the higher those percentages goes up. So I certainly like an 81% chance, way better than a 46% chance. So Sixers, throw out starting lineup number 53, 54, and 55 this season. Why not? I'm available. I could play some power forward, and I certainly could help get the job done with tanking. So hit me up. You know where to find me. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for April 2nd, 2025. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Wednesday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.